All good to go.
Okay. Very good. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Shannon Fleming and will moderate today's webinar. Today's panel includes representatives from the organizations that are currently part of the international arrangement. Enda Whyte is assistant professor in Dublin City University and program chair of the BCS in Athletic Therapy and Training. He is chair of ARTI's International Committee and has been involved in the planning of the recent international arrangement and the previous mutual recognition agreements. Steve Aspinall is the Chief Executive Officer of the British Association of Sport Rehabilitators and Trainers, a lecturer in sport rehabilitation at the University of Salford in the UK, and an associate editor for the British Journal of Sports Medicine. Steve also works with national and international organizations to improve public health, enhance healthcare provision, and develop the profession of sport rehabilitation and athletic training. Rusty McKune is a BOC certified athletic trainer. In his current role as ambulatory supervisor for the sports medicine program at Nebraska Medicine, he is responsible for the growth and development of the organization's sports medicine program. Rusty has been a volunteer for the BOC for over 20 years. He served on the BOC Board of Directors from 2013 to 2020 and was president of the board from 2018 to 2020. He currently serves as the chair of the BOC International Committee, a role he has served since January of 2020. Jennifer Martins is the chair of the International Relations Committee with the CATA, international liaison on the Canadian Board of Certification for Athletic Therapy, and vice president for the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy. She is also currently employed at Sheridan College in the athletic therapy program. All right, Rusty, I'll let you take it up from here.
There we go. Figure this Zoom out here one of these days. Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate the introduction and thanks to everyone for being here today. Just as we jump into our discussion today on the international arrangement, our main talking points we want to look at today as we go through this. We're going to look at the background on the international arrangement, where we've been, how we got to this point, and where we're headed into the future. We want to look at information pertinent to the international arrangement itself. We'll be looking at information and resources for organizations who are interested in joining the arrangement, and also information for candidates wishing to utilize the arrangement to challenge the exams of other organizations. And then finally, we'll take a look at how we're promoting the international arrangement and our plans for moving forward as a group. Next slide. Do I have control of that, or Shannon, do you? There we go. So now just a little bit of history. So where did we start? How did we get to this point? As you can see on the screen, so in 2005, the first mutual recognition agreement was between the BOC and the CATA. For 10 years, those two organizations worked together, and in 2015, it became a tri-party agreement between ARTI, BOC, and the CATA. As it started coming to an end, we knew that in 2020, the agreement was going to be maturing and we were going to need to be renegotiating. So talks started in 2018. In 2019, the MRA, the final MRA finished up between ARTI and the BOC. And during that time and in the process, we started talking about ways that we could modify the current agreement, recognizing that our goals were to hopefully grow the number of organizations that were working together and collaborating to try to increase the ability and the mobility of credential holders. And we realized that there were some limitations on the mutual recognition agreement. And so we sat down and really started trying to figure out ways that we could get an organization that allows for the addition of new organizations really at any time, and also provide a fair and consistent process through which member organizations could join, and also through which candidates could apply to challenge the exams of other organizations. We wanted to ensure that the countries and the organizations had the autonomy necessary to conduct business consistent with the guidelines, practices, rules, and regulations of the respective countries that those organizations were in. And so this is where we're at today. The end result was the international arrangement. And I think Enda is going to take us on here and start talking a little bit more about some of the intricacies and some of the specifics to the arrangement itself. So Enda.
Thanks, Rusty and Shannon. Yeah, so I suppose if you want to put on the next slide there, Shannon, that would be great. So to try and get this process together, and to look about trying to aligning the athletic training and therapy profession and the standards and the national credentials across different international borders, we had to maybe get a third party in to assist with this evaluation to allow us to have greater flexibility in the future if other partners wanted to join in the future, and also just to ensure the standards too. So we liaised with the International Consultants of Delaware Incorporated, which is a division of the CGFNS International, and they were tasked with trying to develop a comparability tool tailored to each organization to allow this kind of cross-checking of standards with the different professional bodies. And the advantage of using the likes of International Consultants of Delaware, it was that they are a charter member of the National Association of Credential Evaluation Services. And this is a globally recognized expert in credentials evaluation for education, for employment, immigration, licensure, and certification. So again, not only did they have a wealth of experience, but they also brought a lot of credibility to the process as well. So that will help ensuring best practice by international standards, and also to give this flexibility to allow other professions or professional associations to join in the future. CGFNS is the leading, it's been the world's largest credentialing evaluation organization for the nursing and allied health professions since 1977. So we've taken on a third-party evaluators that have really got a wealth of experience behind them. And that has helped with our organizations and our representatives from the different organizations to develop this comparability tool. So if you just want to move to the next slide. So to give an overview, what this does, I suppose in the simplest terms, it allows or provides an opportunity for mobility of the different professionals in the different organizations, and the opportunity to travel and work in different jurisdictions. But I think maybe what's very important as well is that it ensures best practice standards and also best educational standards and professional organization standards as well. It's kind of setting this threshold, which I think is really important for the development of the profession globally as well. So there's a couple of dual tasks that I think this does. It has given us this professional mobility, but also kind of ensuring we've got the best practices in terms of education and professional standards. And we continue to develop these and evolve these as the profession develops, and also as other professional bodies seek to join this arrangement. And so I'll just hand over to Steve there now.
So I think one of the things that's kind of worth mentioning is that the World Federation has kind of provided a fantastic kind of foundation for a lot of things that we've actually done in this international arrangement. Over the past 2 decades, we've done lots of work with World Federation and all the different countries involved on everything from kind of curriculum to ethics, standards of ethics and behaviour, credentialing. There's a whole host of work that's kind of gone on behind the scenes for probably kind of a couple of decades leading up to this particular moment in time, and actually kind of us bringing together this international arrangement with the current organisations. There's a number of kind of key areas. Obviously, one of those key areas is education and the education standards that we all actually have, and actually making sure we have agreement around those core areas and what actually needs to be in there. And that's obviously an incredibly kind of in-depth piece of work, There's a lot of detail goes into that. And there's obviously going to be quite a few kind of individual differences. And Jennifer's actually going to talk a little bit more about this and actually kind of go through that in a little bit more detail. One of the other things as well is that we need to have credentialing standards. So that's everything that sits around the examination itself. And the examination is a valid and reliable measure, or it should be, of that actual kind of graduating professional in their particular kind of locality. One of the things kind of worth mentioning is that most of the parties are fairly mature from that perspective. BASRaT is currently a provisional member as we're collecting examination data. So at the moment, we're obviously working with a psychometrician. We're collecting data on the examination to make sure it is a valid and reliable exam. And once that's done, we'll be a full kind of formal partner, and there'll be two-way mobility then between the actual different organisations and countries. Other things that are incredibly important and kind of underpin everything we do are our standards of ethics and behaviour. And that's incredibly important for a profession wherever they are and how they actually develop. And that starts at the point of education. So it links into the education standards, it links into the accreditation, and also how that professional is then managed once they graduate and become a registered part of that profession. So there's kind of really important kind of areas that underpin a lot of the things we do that actually both further the goals of our profession and they protect the wider kind of public, athletes and patients. So that's really kind of important. Mobility standards is in many ways more of a logistical kind of disclosure, where we're actually kind of talking about if there are particular issues in our country that may actually prevent somebody or challenge somebody from actually kind of moving into our locality and working, then we need to make sure we actually disclose those wherever we're actually aware of them. Could we have the next slide, please? So these are the current partners. As I mentioned, BASRaT is a provisional partner at the moment, just as we collect our examination data. One of the things that's definitely worth mentioning as well is that the World Federation is there as a kind of a global framework to support everything we actually do. It supports our profession internationally. If you've not already seen it, on the resource page on the World Federation website, you can actually have a look at a whole host of different kind of resource sets, including education standards. So if people are looking to develop their own programs, they're looking to actually compare programs, there's already a whole host of information on the World Federation to actually help give you that framework and actually help to connect you as well with another community that's worldwide. Now, when we talk about the international arrangement, and at the moment, obviously, we have the 4 principal countries that are involved in this. And we obviously won't be the only countries going forwards, but we are obviously kind of the partners at the moment as part of this international arrangement. Now, we're kind of taking, if you like, that foundation that we've had over those last couple of decades, and we've actually expanded that certainly into particular localities to allow people that portability to work in different areas and different regions. Whereas clearly in the past, that was prevented. You couldn't say, for example, graduate in the United Kingdom and then actually be able to challenge an exam over in the United States. So that is obviously kind of a very, very big deal. And it's something we're incredibly excited about. I think one of the other things as well, it is actually worth mentioning that all the organisations and going forwards as well, we're all going to work as critical friends to actually help us all develop and hopefully feed into the worldwide and the global community to try to make sure, you know, as a global profession, we're both united and strong. And that's something hopefully over the next decade, we're going to see massive changes in the recognition of what we all do, not only in our individual countries, but also from an international and global perspective as well. And I think Jennifer's going to talk a little bit more now about the education side.
Okay, so we're just going to circle back now to more of the nuts and bolts of the arrangement itself. And I'm just going to touch on a little bit of what we did as IA partners to establish this from a more educational and credentialing standards. So we met, all of us together with ICD, and went point by point and looked over all of the education and credentialing standards of each country. We kind of, after numerous times, we were able to kind of get to this establishing a minimum educational standard for the IA, and we are able to kind of meet that threshold for future, as Steve alluded to there, as for future countries to join, as well as a standard for the 4 of us to kind of meet that minimum equivalency for our members. These standards are now the benchmark in which we are going to make sure each applicant that wants to apply will meet in order to go to the partner organization or partner country. In order to do that, now that that's been established and ICD has that framework established, we are going to, any applicant that applies for this international arrangement through ICD, they're going to have to provide academic courses, syllabi, continuing professional education, any related activities to help us establish a cumulative knowledge, abilities, expertise, anything about that applicant to make sure they're meeting that minimum competency. So their ICD is going to make sure that these applicants meet that. And then I'll kind of go into it in a little bit in the next slide, but once that outcome evaluation is done by ICD, we will be able to identify if there are any gaps for each of these applicants. And then if there are any gaps, each organization will address them so that that applicant can meet that exam eligibility and be successful in that, and be successful with future endeavors where they want to go. Okay, but that autonomy does come from each international arrangement partner. So specifically, as people that are on this call here are looking at, okay, so how do we go through this? How do we do this? I suggest, or we all suggest, that the first thing you need to do is visit the IA partner where you're looking to go to, visit their website. We've all updated that with information that you need to know, and get familiar with what the process is and what's in your future. This is not going to happen overnight. This is something you're committing to. This is not a, hey, I'm just going to fly over there for the weekend. This is a long process. So you need to know what's involved with that. And I highly recommend getting as much information as you can. So you need to know, such as you do need to be certified in the country where you've obtained your education. Students always like to try to start the process a little bit sooner, but we need to make sure that you've passed that credentialing exam in that home country first. And then also, 4 different countries, 4 different ways of doing things. Exams are given at different time frames. Yeah, exams are different times, different things that you need to do throughout the year are given in different time frames. So being aware that it's not going to happen within a week, and give yourself a good, I guess, buffer of time so that you can work through these differences as they come along. So all that information is on the International Arrangement Partner website where you want to go. Once you get all that information, you can start the application process by applying to that specific international arrangement organization where you want to be credentialed in. Once you've finished that application, that IA organization will direct you to the ICD website so that you can complete the evaluation with ICD. You're going to complete the ICD application and all the sending in documents, sending in things that need to be done there, and that's in detail as well. Once that has all been completed, ICD will provide an evaluation report to the applicant, as well as the IA organization where that applicant wants to attend or go to. And then the IA organization will determine the exam eligibility based off of that report to that applicant. So that's the the process that you can look forward to. But again, I really just highly recommend getting as much information as you can at the front end, because there are a lot of intricacies to it and it takes a lot of time. So, okay. And I'm passing it back to Rusty, I believe.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. So, I mean, we've talked and spent a lot of time talking about, okay, how do we get to the point? How do we get to the credential? And I think one of the things that we want to make sure that we stress and that we focus on here at the end is, how do you maintain that credential? And I think everybody is familiar with the process in their own country and then with their own organization that they are credentialed by. But I think that the key thing to remember with this process is that once you're credentialed in another country by another organization, you have to remember to remain compliant with the requirements for that organization, and the onus of that responsibility falls upon the credential holder. And so, as individuals and applicants go through the process of obtaining the credential, and once they've been successful and celebrated the fact that they now have that credential, the one thing that they want to remember and want to make sure is that they continue to focus on not only maintaining the original credential that they have from the original organization, but also what do they need to do to maintain the new credential. And each of the organizations has their own requirements, so they'll need to make sure that they follow through and look at those. Each organization also has a set of continuing education requirements and continuing competence requirements, and they have opportunities that are published and accessible, that will allow the credential holders to maintain that credential based upon those maintenance requirements. So, make sure that as you go through this process, and as people go through this process, we want to make sure that we encourage them to know what their responsibility is as a professional within the organizations and within the jurisdictions that they're practicing now in a dual form in many cases. So, next slide. As far as promoting the international arrangement, we're trying to get the word out, and one of the things that I want to make sure, and Stephen has alluded to it, and Jen mentioned it, and Enda mentioned it as well, and so I want to close here with this little piece by extending a thanks to the World Federation for allowing us to be here today to share this. This is actually one of the second opportunities that we've had to present to the World Federation membership. Several months ago, at the membership meeting, we presented a very similar presentation. And so, the World Federation has worked very hard with us to ensure that this messaging is getting out. And so we want to thank them for that opportunity. If there's presentations that we can do, we're actively seeking opportunities to work with groups. It doesn't have to be formal presentations, but if there's opportunities that we can have to share the information, we really feel like that's going to be one of the strongest ways, in addition to emails and social media, just to get the word out that we now have this new opportunity and that we're excited to share the information, and that there is a process that people need to go through and be familiar with. But we couldn't do all that without the partners that we have here and without the partnership that we have globally with the World Federation. And so, a lot of thanks and recognition goes to them as well. There is an international arrangement website. If you're interested in going to that, it's housed on the BOC website. But as Jen said, each of the member organizations, if you go to their website, it'll take you to an international arrangement landing page, and it'll get you the information that you need. But any information that you may need is there. And if the information that you are looking for isn't there, there's contact information that you can certainly reach out, and someone within either the BOC or any of the other organizations will be happy to help provide you with those answers and those responses for that. Additionally, be on the lookout, and many of you may have already received emails, but there'll be emails coming from organizations that you're members of, from talking about this, and from the international partners talking about the international arrangement. So be on the lookout for those. And again, word of mouth goes a long ways, especially in this profession. We all know that a lot of times it's not what you know, but who you know that helps you find the information that you need. And so, you know, if there's questions that you have, if there's things that we can help answer today, certainly feel free to ask those as we go into the question and answer session here shortly. But otherwise, make sure that you reach out to any one of the members here. We're happy to help you out as much as we can. So, next slide. Discussion.
All right, and I'm gonna put it so that everybody can see your wonderful faces, I think. Anyways. So thank you guys for the presentation. And as we transition to our panel discussion, a reminder that you can enter any questions you may have into the chat box, as well as the Q&A section. And we hope to have time at the end to answer those questions. And panelists, please jump in at any time when we're going through some of these discussion points. First off, Enda, please clarify what the international arrangement is and is not.
So what the international arrangement is? Okay, well, it's a system by which basically will allow the mobility of athletic training and therapy professionals globally, or in the 4 partner countries anyhow. So it allows the credential holder in Ireland or Canada or the UK or USA to potentially challenge the credentialing exam in one of the other countries. So it allows that mobility, and with that the opportunity for professional mobility, for work opportunities, for study opportunities. So that's essentially what it is. And I think what's really important with it as well is that it is kind of showing the global profession that we are, and it's also, you know, developing and the standards and highlighting the standards that are needed for this profession. So they're the 2 things that I think that it is. What it's not, well, there's loads of things it's not, but I suppose one of the important things in terms of questions that I regularly get, it is not a system to get a visa. Okay, it is not a system to that all the visa or immigration issues are separate from this process. So anybody who has concerns with that, you'll see even on each of the IEA organization websites, there'll be directions to the relevant governmental bodies to look about questions about immigration or visas. Also, it's not a guaranteed job opportunity either. So, you know, I think it's very important for people, if they are considering moving from one jurisdiction to another, to look at the profession in that jurisdiction, because it does differ quite a lot in the different jurisdictions that the IA members are in. So I think that's important. So it's just those two things. I think it's important to highlight. They're not. It's not an immigration process. It's not a visa process, and it's not a job fair either.
Thank you, Enda. And this is for all panelists, and we'll maybe start with you, Enda. How does the international arrangement impact your organization?
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's huge, and I think this is from ARTI's perspective, this is one of the biggest parts of the IA process. Like on an individual member basis, yes, it opens this opportunity for a single member, Enda Whyte, or any other member of ARTI to potentially work in Canada or the UK or the USA or study there. So it opens that individual mobility. But to us as an organization, what it has done in Ireland, because it's quite a new profession in Ireland, but all of a sudden we're a member of the athletic therapy and the athletic training and therapy profession, and we can show the standards that are required to join this IA. We can show the educational standards, the professional standards that are necessary to be members of the IA. So when we go to talk to governmental bodies in Ireland or sporting bodies in Ireland or hospitals, we're able to explain very quickly and succinctly and demonstrate the level of standard of this profession and of which ARTI is part of. So that there are 2 things that I think are really important. One last thing, and I don't want to be hogging this, you'll be sick of listening to me, is what this does is the IA allows for the development of the profession too. And we're going to learn from our partners in Canada, in the USA, in the UK, changes and developments that happen there. We're going to be able to become aware of those and make those changes here in Ireland as well if we need it. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to learn and for us to develop and improve our educational standards and our professional practice standards as we go forward. So there are a number of things that I think it's very useful for from ARTI's perspective.
Jennifer?
From a CATA standpoint, I do get a lot of inquiries because we are very close to our neighbors to the south. But with our professional teams, our farm teams, a lot of sports do cross borders very easily. So this IA does allow the opportunity for CATA members, NATA, BOC certified members to accept these positions and expand our profession that way. You don't want to sky's the limit on what you can achieve in this profession. So I think that's really exciting because we do get a lot of inquiries about that. And then as Enda alluded to as well, it's just a great opportunity for ATs to continue to learn and grow from each other. We each have very unique perspectives of things, and uniqueness is special, and it grows you as a person, as a profession, and it's exciting to contribute to this as increasing our level in our profession itself. So,
Rusty?
Wow, I don't know that I have a lot to add. They both said a lot of good things. You know, I think specifically to the BOC, it does, and it adds value to the ability of our credential holders to be able to challenge the exams of other organizations and expand their ability to potentially move somewhere else in practice. So I think that there's a value that it adds to the credential. But I think to follow on what both Jen and Enda have said, it does allow us to see and to appreciate the differences, and to see and to appreciate the similarities in how healthcare is being practiced around the globe, and to recognize the fact that like Jen said, there's unique things that happen in each area and within each organization and in each country, and it helps us to become stronger practitioners and healthcare providers. And I think that's a global opportunity, but I do think that's one of the values that it really does add to the BOC credential, in addition to everything else that's been mentioned previously.
Stephen, anything to add?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of things. I mean, I definitely echo all of those kind of ideas, and you know, all those kind of incredible benefits that we're going to get from this. But I think for us, the portability is a bonus. It's something that comes kind of packaged up with this, but I think that something that's really kind of key and at the center of everything we do is this development of our profession. And one of the things I think we see, certainly if you work just at a national level and you work in particular silos, you become quite stagnated in many ways. I think you need that challenge from other organizations. You need to see what else is actually happening. You need to be working together closely so you can actually kind of challenge each other's standards and help to improve each other's standards as well. And that's incredibly, incredibly important. So this development of our profession, both nationally and globally, is obviously going to help all of us. One of the other things I think as well is that at the moment, and certainly over the past 2 decades, we all put a tremendous amount of work into our kind of own organizations. We put in, you know, kind of huge amounts of time to different kind of projects. And what I'd like to see in the future is that instead of actually doing that and kind of replicating effort in lots of different localities, where actually we can share a lot more kind of resource, we can share a lot more expertise. And that will allow us to develop a lot more as a profession. We'll have a lot more time to do other stuff as well. And in addition, that sharing of resources means that each of our professions in each individual country will hopefully mean they get a lot more from their profession. So it's a national kind of organization, but it's international and global benefits, which is what I really want to see. I want to see this kind of development. I want to see this change in the profession over these next kind of couple of decades. I want us to become a true global profession, and one that isn't sitting, you know, in that same position. I want to see us moving forwards all the time. and it's incredibly exciting. I can't wait to see, you know, what the next 10 years holds for us.
Thank you. Rusty, this one's for you. How can the organizations of the international arrangement be a resource for other organizations or countries interested in a credential and or the international arrangement?
Well, I think that if we can play back the recording on what Steve just said, I think he hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it was, I don't think I can say it any better. I think that being a resource for other groups and other organizations, as they're trying to find their way down this pathway of developing credentials and developing as organizations, I think is essential. I think that we can definitely learn from the successes, but you also learn from the failures of those that you work with. And I think being able to share those opportunities is one of the biggest things that I know the four of us have benefited from working together throughout this process. And I think that's one of the things that we're most excited to do and excited to see happen as the profession grows and as opportunities come for organizations to develop, to grow, to try to help promote the profession around the globe. As they get to that point in their organizational life cycle where they're looking at a credential, looking at one of the international arrangement members who credentials, which all of us do, and asking and finding out what has worked, what hasn't worked, what's been unique about your credential compared to others, and what pitfalls should we avoid and what successes should we build upon. I think that's one of the biggest things that can come from a resource standpoint. And again, I think to Stephen's point, the ability to help and look forward and provide the opportunity to see this profession grow globally. Any way that we can collaborate with other organizations, the World Federation is just going to benefit. And being a resource for that is an opportunity and a privilege, and you know, one that we look forward to.
Right. Stephen, you've already touched on this, and I don't know if you've got anything to add, but what does the international arrangement do for global recognition of the profession?
I'm not sure what I can add to that one, to be honest. Just kind of reiterate all my kind of previous points. As I say, it kind of brings us together. You know, we are stronger together. We've got a much kind of bigger presence, and we're also going to be, I think, a much more efficient and effective profession from both a kind of an education and a kind of standards perspective as we go forward, and we can actually present that in a much kind of clearer and more kind of coherent fashion as well. I don't think I've got anything else to add to that one.
Very good. Jennifer, we'll start with you, but anyone can jump in at any time. But what do you see as the future scope of the international arrangement?
I think now that we've kind of made this educational minimum educational standard, it would be really great if we can get more countries involved. Like helping this grow. I know it's exciting for the four of us, but let's get some more countries involved. The world is an amazing, beautiful place, and our profession is an amazing place. So let's put all those good things together, and like we all alluded to, let's help each other out get there. We've all started really small. We're all in different levels of where we are in our countries and establishing athletic therapy or athletic training, athletic therapy profession. So if we can help other countries get into this arrangement and provide these opportunities for our members, that's where I kind of see it going. And I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm honored and excited to be a part of it. So.
Anyone else like to chime in on the future?
Yeah, I'll jump in there as well. And I just to echo what's being said here, I think, you know, there's real great enthusiasm in the partners here, and also with the World Federation, to really support and develop this profession globally, and because I think there's a real need for it. And so we're definitely speaking on behalf of the IAA partners here. We really want this to grow, and that was part of the reason why it moved from the MRA to the IE to the international arrangement now, and using our ICD partners as well, that we're able to relatively quickly, I should say, people are able, or other organizations are able to see where they stand in comparison with the education standards and professional standards that are needed there. And I think in combination with the World Federation partners as well, you know, we'd really like to encourage other countries to go along this pathway too, because as Steve has alluded to there, you know, there's great strength in this profession, particularly if we join together. And this level of arrangement that the international arrangement provides, I think it's fairly unique across healthcare professionals or healthcare professional associations throughout the world to be at this level of agreement, and this kind of acknowledging the differences in some aspects of our professions in different parts of the world, but also having that common core and acknowledging that and kind of acknowledging the standards from other parts of the world. I think that's fairly unique in healthcare throughout the world. So I have to say to other organizations, other countries, yeah, we want to assist in this. We want this to grow. We want this to be a first step in a greater family of the athletic training and therapy profession, working with our World Federation partners.
Rusty or Steve? Anything to add?
I don't think I can add anything that hasn't been said.
Very good. All right, so this is again for everyone. We can start with Enda. What is the need or importance of continuing education availability on an international basis? Do you currently have ATs practicing outside of your organization's country? For example, the US or BOC certification, we have over 800 athletic trainers located in 41 different countries.
Yeah, we do have the number, and I'm not able to provide you the exact numbers in the different countries, but yeah, we do have quite a significant number of international members of ARTI. So, and they would primarily consist of people who are educated in Ireland, got their credential in Ireland, and then moved abroad. We would have a small number as well who came through the previous MRA, and there's a strong requirement that in order to maintain your credential as a certified member of ARTI, you have to continue with your continual professional education requirements. And this is standard because the profession is consistently developing. We have to make sure that the whole purpose, I suppose, of one of the main purposes of these organizations is to ensure the standards of care for our athletes and for our patients that we look after. So an essential part of that is going to be your continuing education, and therefore it's going to be an essential part of your maintaining your credential. Whether you're in Ireland or whether you're international, you're still going to have to do that. And I think with this partnership here, there's going to be greater opportunity or a greater resource for continuing professional education opportunities as we go forward.
Rusty or Jen or Steve?
From a CATA standpoint, I think we have around 60 or so ATs that are working abroad. But I actually am normally the person communicating with our international members. So I do get a lot of questions about how do we do continuing education courses when we are living in such country or whatnot. So I guess we don't get to say this a lot, but I feel like COVID has actually given us a little bit of a positive in this direction, in that there are a lot more online courses that can be delivered now. But potentially, if you're over an ocean or in another one of our international arrangement partner countries, as we were kind of alluding to here, you can take these continuing education courses a lot easier, where you're not having to fly back home or on Christmas break, do some courses. So providing this opportunity for international members is exciting, and I think it will help a lot of people as well.
And to build on that, the echo, you know, obviously the maintaining your confidence is essential to maintaining the credential. And I think that anytime you talk about membership and credential holder satisfaction and needs and those types of things, finding ways to meet them where they're at and make things as simple and as accessible as we can is one of the key things that, you know, that you want to focus on, so that they're not having to struggle to maintain that credential. And that's where I think, you know, the collaborative efforts of partners around the globe, World Federation, you know, having opportunities like the webinars that they're doing, where they're drawing a number of individuals with varying credentials. And, you know, if the World Federation can provide CE opportunities for all of those organizations and for all of those credential holders, what an opportunity that becomes then to reach an even larger population. And so I think that as, you know, as we grow and as we start seeing more credential holders cross boundaries and cross borders, I think that one of the opportunities that is going to be there, and one of the things that will need to be recognized, is the fact that there's going to have to be, I shouldn't say have to be, but there's an opportunity for the organizations to work with each other and be able to provide some CEs for other credential holders and other organizations within their countries. You know, make a CE opportunity open for CATA, ARTI, BASRaT credential holders, and have it held here and broadcast around the globe, I think is, you know, is a great opportunity. And really, like I say, I think from a World Federation standpoint, they're already doing some of that. And I think it's an even better service and a better resource to the members as it grows and as it continues to grow.
Steve, anything to add?
The only thing I'll probably add is that we've already seen a fantastic uptake on kind of international CPD opportunities. So some of our webinars, you know, we've had huge numbers of athletic trainers and athletic therapists from all over the world actually join into our webinars, which has been absolutely brilliant to see. So the last couple of years has actually been quite formative, I think, for us as a profession anyway. And going forwards, as we start to develop that and share that even more, I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity. And I'd also hope, as I say, as we build up our collection of resources, hopefully we'll start to develop platforms where we can share lots of kind of educational kind of material, not only kind of continuing professional development, but also for people returning to the profession or wanting to remind themselves of particular areas of practice. So I'd like to see in the future, you know, kind of a set of resources available for us to actually provide, you know, a whole host of different professionals within our nationalities, which is, I think, going to be incredibly valuable to help kind of strengthen the profession and also kind of protect the public as well, which is really, really important when we have people returning back to practice who've had breaks. You know, they might have been out of things for kind of a number of years for whatever reason. So I think there's a whole host of different opportunities here, and hopefully we'll start to realise those over the coming years. So really exciting.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your wonderful comments. We do have a little bit of time for some questions, which we did receive a few. So I'll just kind of go through those. Given syllabi change over time, would applicants have to provide a historical syllabus, i.e. the year they graduated, which now may not exist in the same form, or the current syllabus? Will the home organization provide this on request? And I'm sure that this is likely different for various countries. Jen?
So this is a good question. We're going to try to do the best we can with the information. It's not a sticking point. So yes, if you have access to your syllabi, ICD will request, if you can send it along, that would be great. But if you can't, we still look, they're going to collect as much information as they can. And if you don't have it, we will kind of take all the pieces with continuing education, with other experiences. It's one of the pieces. It's not going to make or break whether you're going to be entered into or accepted or not. But if you, once we get the, let's just say, for example, you're coming from another country to CATA, once we kind of get a look at the stuff that you have, your educational standards, if we notice that there might be something that you need in order to be successful and work in Canada, we might suggest potentially another course or something that you can do to kind of meet that. So absolutely, it's impossible to have all course syllabi ever, but from hopefully the last 10 years, there's something in your academic institution where they have it. And if not, we will address it on an individual basis and make that accommodation as necessary. I think everybody kind of agrees with that, but anybody else want to jump in on that?
Thank you. Another question is it recommended to complete the credentialing process prior to a prospective job search or the reverse? Any thoughts on that?
I'm going to jump in and say I would recommend it if this is something you're going to be committed to and do. Yes, it's time consuming. So I wouldn't want you to potentially have a job offer on the table and then you're like, oh, I need to be credentialed in this country next week. It's not possible. It's not going to happen. So if you are looking to work in another country, you're committing to this process. It's time consuming. There is money involved, time, everything. So get this done, going hand in hand. Yes, still looking for jobs as well, but get this done so that, yeah, the doors are open, and potentially using ARTI, BOC, BASRaT we have job postings. So you would be in the door and seeing where you can go from there. So would be my suggestion. Yeah.
And I think along with that too, I mean, just because you have the credential doesn't mean that you're going to qualify, you know, and especially like here in the States, we've got 50 different states and there's 50 different ways to do things. And so, you know, you want to make sure that you understand the requirements and really what the regulations are within the jurisdiction that you're going to, so that you understand, you know, will your education process meet the requirements of the state, because there's oftentimes where there may be requirements or of a jurisdiction that are in addition to the requirements of the credential. And so, you know, you want to make sure that you have everything in place. And, you know, as employers, I think we all look at this, and if somebody isn't credentialed, and especially in international, where you're looking at this, where there is potentially some time and there's a lot of rules and regs, if somebody isn't credentialed and they're applying for a job, there's a lot of things that you've got to consider. And if I've got two applicants, one that is, one that isn't, there's going to be a leaning towards the one that already is, because I know that they're employable and they can come to work. So, you know, adding the whole international scene to it and the visa and everything else that goes along in that process, that just adds a whole other layer to this conversation, this discussion. So I would agree with Jen. I think that you want to either have that credential or be well on your way to, you know, taking the exam and those types of things before you start really putting your name out there and getting those interviews and looking for those jobs.
Just one other thing to add as well. I think it is important to look at the immigration policies in the different countries and the visa requirements, to look at that as well, because I know that does vary in the different jurisdictions. So that's just another consideration, as well as the applying for the credential in the other country and looking for jobs in the other country. Just check the immigration as well.
We did kind of get a question over here as well. How do work visas, etc., work? Could you gain certification but then denied a visa? And this kind of goes hand in hand, that, yeah, we don't do anything with visas. You could go through this process and equivalency of credentials, but we have nothing to do with the visa process. So it is something to consider, that if you're not going to get a visa, there's not much we can do about that.
Okay, another question. Are there any risks to this agreement or arrangement? I see a lot of stumped faces.
I think one of the risks is we're going to become an absolutely incredible global profession. That's probably the biggest risk. I wouldn't see any kind of real risks. I'd see challenges. There's lots and lots of challenges for all of us as we develop, and sometimes the challenges will be uncomfortable as well, because we're quite happy often with our processes or our frameworks, our education standards, and those are definitely going to be challenged as we go forwards. But I wouldn't see them as risks. I'd certainly see them as a challenge and an actual means to progress our profession. And it's something we need to be doing anyway. We don't want to be sitting here in our silos. We really need to actually be challenging each other and you know, making sure we can have these open discussions and develop as a profession.
I think one of the other risks, and again, it's probably not a risk, it's a challenge and something to be aware of, is not being, you know, not recognizing what this isn't. So, you know, looking at what Enda talked about earlier, it's not a way to abuse. It doesn't guarantee a job. It doesn't guarantee those opportunities. And so I think just making sure that you understand what it is and what it isn't, and but also appreciate and capitalize on the opportunities. Because I think sometimes a failure to capitalize on something like that is a risk, and a failure to recognize what this could become and the potential for what it holds is a risk. And so I think that, you know, if we get complacent, if we get comfortable and just get happy with where it's at, and don't capitalize on the collaborative opportunities that exist out there, and capitalize on the resources and the expertise that we have within each other and others around the globe, I think that would be a risk. But, you know, again, there's so much opportunity on the other side of that I think that it's outstanding and amazing what lies ahead.
Anyone else? Okay. Another one, and I'll just read our comment and then our question. This is such an awesome and exciting opportunity for all the countries and professions, especially for BOC. How can this arrangement help CATA, the education arm in the US, and other credentialing bodies allow for ARTI, CATA, or BASRaT professionals to be preceptors for clinical experiences? And it does look like Steve typed his answer in for BASRaT, but any other thoughts on that? Jen? Nope.
I would say probably World Federation is a good resource to probably reach out to in that standpoint. They have a lot of networking connections kind of already established with academic institutions, and a lot of networking already established. So rather than just like, you don't want to start something from the ground up, World Federation has really done a lot in the last probably 2 years, 3 years now, to kind of get that ball rolling. So that would be my recommendation, to reach out there first. And then, yeah, the more people involved and the more we know and the more that we can talk and network, the sky's the limit on this. We can go anywhere with this.
I think it's a good question. Like, I know the ARTI International Committee, we've already got a number of inquiries from different institutions in the US and in Canada about placement opportunities and internship opportunities. And I think it's something that we in ARTI and maybe the IA partners need to kind of put a little bit of a thought together about how best to approach this, like, so that it is a bit more streamlined, and maybe there are the opportunities. It might be up to ARTI to see, look, here's a host of or potential number of clinics that are interested in taking people for a period of time. We need to get information from CATA or from the CATA or from BASRaT. What are the requirements for the placement? So there's a little bit to do on that, but it really, it's just a positive sign of something that we mightn't have seen initially as happening so quickly, but we're already getting those requests in, and I think we just need to maybe formalize it a wee bit more.
Very good. Another question is, what opportunities are available to current practitioners to get involved and help further promote this arrangement and the overall development of the profession? Which again, Steve indicated, you know, obviously get involved locally with your profession. Any other thoughts?
I mean, probably one of the other things as well is obviously keeping an eye on the World Federation and the kind of positions and the help that are available there, because everything kind of links together. I don't think anything exists, you know, on its own or in isolation. You know, everything that's happening now has kind of come from the last 2 decades and all the work that's been done. And that's with both the World Federation and all the individual kind of organizations themselves. So it's obviously kind of looking locally, first of all, and seeing where you can get involved in your kind of profession locally. Certainly, if you express a desire to work, you know, as you know, towards furthering the international arrangement, that's going to be incredibly important. But also, obviously, those positions within the World Federation as well, hopefully going to kind of support this kind of profession, and everything will kind of link together. And once you start to get involved in these kind of different areas, it's easier then to see where else you can actually work and where else you'd like to actually, you know, put your skills, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and actually try to drive things forwards. So there are lots of opportunities. I'd say start locally, look at the World Federation as well, and then take it from there and then build on that.
I think Steve makes some very good points there, particularly, getting involved in the World Federation, signing up for the different educational webinars in the World Federation, I think are important steps. Going to the World Congress this coming summer, I think, is another important step. So there's lots of different ways in which people in the different national organizations can work towards this, increasing the global presence of our profession without necessarily having to join ARTI or to join the BOC or to join BASRaT or the CATA. I think the first step is, Steve says, look locally what you can do to help the profession, and then see how we can get involved with the World Federation then too.
And I think capitalizing on the expertise that are out there and the experiences, don't be afraid to ask. And I think that every organization has been through a different process, and I think learning from that, and again, of course, recognizing that everybody wants the same thing. So you go to the World Federation, they're willing to be a resource and say, well, what about talking with ARTI? What about talking with BASRaT? What about talking with CATA or BOC or NATA or JADO or any of their other members? They're going to be a good resource for that. And then, recognizing too that as you start, if you're looking specifically at credentialing, talk to those organizations about credentialing. If you're looking about accreditation, talk to those organizations about accreditation, because there's so many things that go into building a profession. It's not just it's not just one piece of that. There's so many things that go into developing that professional, and recognizing that all those things have to come together in some way, shape, or form. But there's lots of different recipes for it, and I think finding that recipe that works best for you is take some work and take some energy, but in the end, it'll fit you and your needs the best. And I think that's probably one of the best services that you can do for yourself.
All right, well, we're over the hour, if it was supposed to last an hour. So thank you to our panelists today. And we really appreciate everyone's participation, and reach out to one of our organizations if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.